What's good, people? I arrived back in Rio just over a month ago after travelling through the three Guyanas for a month and a half, plus a little semi-unplanned trip to Venezuela. I had another month on my Brazilian tourist visa, so I thought I'd stay in Rio for another month and then do a little bit of travelling with my girlfriend, so I decided that we'd go to Puerto Iguaçu, which is just on the border of Argentina and Paraguay. And it's like a big waterfall, in fact the biggest waterfall system in the world, that I went to like a year before, and this time I was going in summer. The last time I went in winter, so it's a cool place to go because you got the Brazilian side for the waterfall, but also the Argentinian side, and they give you like a different perspective. One side is like you're inside the waterfall basically on the Brazilian side, and then on the Argentinian side you walk in like through all the lakes and stuff, but you can also still get to the big waterfall area. It's a little bit more of an adventure on the Argentinian side, but yeah, it's easy to visit both of them. If you're in the area, they're both quite close to each other, even though it's two different countries. But yeah, we stayed there for like a couple of days, and then now I'm in Paraguay, in Asunción, the capital. I just want to make a disclaimer first, because obviously some people from the title, they're going to say, why is he telling on himself? But obviously, like, it's not something I intentionally did, and this video is just advice on how to not get in the situation that I got myself into. In early September, I left Brazil via Lethem in the north to French Guyana and then Suriname, and I made a little video about how I made that trip. And since I was going over to Guyana then back to Brazil, I thought I might as well make a video about how I did the full loop, as well as a little side trip I did to Venezuela. I was going to make my way to Georgetown, Guyana from Paramaribo, Suriname, in the same way pretty much as I'd left French Guyana for Suriname. But like, again, there was no like numbers to call, there was nothing online to say this bus comes this time or anything like that. But I got a taxi number from like a travel agency that I'd used to do this tour, and I called the woman, and the woman just said, yeah, what time do you want to take the taxi? And I said, in time to get the ferry across the river to get to Guyana. And she said, right, it's going to come at this time. It will call you the day before to organise everything and just confirm like your location and stuff. And then that was it. There was no like confirmation email, nothing like that. I just had to, take this woman's word for it. So it was a little bit unnerving again, because, I like to know exactly what's going to happen. Like, I don't like to just have a conversation and then just think, right, they've got all the information necessary and like this is how it's going to be. But yeah, I didn't really have any other choice. That's just how it is. So obviously before, I've said that I like to stay in Airbnbs when I'm traveling, and that's what I do most of the time. But if you're probably staying in a hotel or something like that, it's going to be easier because they probably deal with these things all the time. The taxi was meant to come around 4:30, but it didn't actually arrive until around 6:30, so I was just waiting around for nothing. But this ferry leaves at like 12:30, and it takes like 4 hours or something to get there, so even with this delay, like, it didn't really make a difference anyway. And then when he picked me up, he picked up like a few other people around town, and we ended up getting there like 10, nearly 11 o'clock, so we still had a little time to wait. The journey itself was actually cushy, like, it was just country roads again and a lot of nice scenery, and in Suriname there's not really much traffic outside Paramaribo, so it was just a nice smooth journey. We stopped for like a little bit of food, and then you're just driving through like a load of nice Dutch towns and stuff like that. So yeah, I didn't really mind the journey too much. He dropped me right outside immigration, and then I got my exit stamp, and then you buy a ticket for the ferry, and I think it was like 115 SRD, which Surinamese dollars, or 4,000 Guyanese dollars, which is about 150. So if you've still got Surinamese dollars, then it's obviously cheaper. The ferry left on time, and it took about half an hour to get across, but unfortunately, like, there was some random torrential rain, like it just came out of nowhere. It was raining pretty much the whole time, so we just had to stay inside, and it was kind of hot because there was a lot of people, but it was a tiny area too. But outside there wasn't really much to see anyway. It was just murky, like you couldn't really see much, and obviously the water's dirty, so it looks murky. But it was nice to stand outside a little bit towards the end because, because of the rain and the breeze, it was giving you a little break from the humidity. Immigration on the Guyanese side was easy. It's visa-free for British passport holders and European passport holders. And the border town there is Molson Creek. And then what they do is they actually give you a voucher on the Suriname side, and you give that voucher to like a taxi driver on the Guyanese side, and then they'll just take you. And then from there it was like 3 hours to Georgetown. This part of the journey on the Guyanese side wasn't as nice because the roads aren't as nice. Also, they had a lot of road works going on, and they were all badly arranged. Like, we had to drive in some weird routes just to get to where we wanted to go to. So yeah, it wasn't as nice. And also on top of that, what made it worse is that there was a Guyanese guy in the same taxi, and they tried to bring in too much alcohol, so they charged him duty. And he was just constantly complaining about it the whole time. Like, the whole journey was complaining about it. Plus we got held up for like an hour because he had to pay just to get his alcohol back. So yeah, we ended up getting there basically in the evening, even though we should have got there like a couple hours earlier. But besides that, it was fine, really. For me personally, I preferred Paramaribo. Like, I just love Suriname. There's just this vibe and culture about it that's very different to a lot of like Caribbean countries. Like, Georgetown was alright, but compared to Paramaribo, there's not really much going on there. But Guyana in general is more of a country that you go to enjoy the interior, where you've got places like Cato Falls, where there's nothing like that in the rest of the world. So I'd definitely go there if it's more of a adventure, like holiday. But Georgetown isn't that bad, really. Like, there's a lot of nice buildings, a lot of colonial buildings, and the town's like quite pleasant. It's not really that dangerous. But one thing I did enjoy was a visit to the Roy Geddes Steel Pan Museum, which is basically his house turned into a museum. And like, when it comes to museums, I'm not really interested most of the time because I don't get anything from seeing artifacts in a building that has no relevance to what's on display. So this was a good thing because obviously, you know, you're hearing history from the horse's mouth, really. Like, he's been involved with this all his time. And plus, I like to support people who are involved in activities that promote black culture. After Georgetown, I was going to head back to Brazil via a city called Boa Vista, which is right at the top near the border of Venezuela and Guyana. And there's a little border town in Guyana called Lethem. And when I looked online, most people were getting to this city overland, which was like 12 hours, because even though the distance isn't that great, there was no paved roads after you leave Georgetown pretty much. So obviously this would have been less than ideal, so I was looking how I could do it, and I found some airlines. One of them was Guyana Airways, and another one was Air Services Limited, and they fly from an airport in Georgetown called Ogle, and it takes like an hour, goes direct, so I thought that would be perfect. Guyana was like $170, and Air Services was I think $140, so I just took Air Services. I couldn't find much information at first because these airlines don't show up on like Skyscanner or anything like that. You have to actually book directly at the airport or with one of the travel agents within Georgetown. When I got to the airport, I was charged an extra $20 for the weight I had. I think I had 15 kg altogether. But yeah, I misread it as being 20 kg instead of 20 pounds, so I would have had to pay it anyway, so it didn't matter. But when I saw the plane, I knew that it wasn't just to charge people extra money for nothing like a lot of these cheap airlines, because the plane was like a 15-seater and I hadn't been on one that size since I did skydiving in New Zealand. On the flight, there was this Cuban guy behind me and he didn't look like he was enjoying it at all. Like, to be honest, it was pretty rocky just because of the size of the plane. But yeah, it wasn't a bad flight because once you leave Georgetown, it's just pretty much dense rainforest and like rivers and stuff like that, so it's nice to look at. And then it's like that all the way until you get to the Upper Takutu region. And once you arrive in the Upper Takutu, Upper Esquibo region, the landscape just changes completely, like into vast savannah for thousands of square miles. It's kind of weird how drastically it changes, but yeah, it's quite unbelievable to look at because it's not really something that you would associate with a country like Guyana in South America. It looks like something from Africa. We landed in Lethem and it was just a small little dusty town and very humid. I don't think there's much to do there, but I know people do ATV tours and horseback riding and things like that in the savannah, but I wasn't staying there any time, so I just got a taxi to the border, and then the taxi driver dropped you outside the Guyanese side, and then you get your exit stamp and stuff, and then they wait for you and then take you to the Brazilian side. It's a city called Bonfim. And then from there I got my stamp and another shared taxi to Boa Vista. Boa Vista is the biggest town in this region between Brazil, Guyana and Venezuela. But even then there wasn't really much to it, to be honest. And while I was in Georgetown, I spoke to someone about visiting Venezuela, and they said, yeah, you can go to the Gran Sabana, which is just across the border, and it would be like a cool thing to do. And as I was going to be there a few days, like I planned for a few days just in case anything happened while I was trying to leave Georgetown, I thought I might as well use these days to visit Venezuela. And it was convenient also as there was a Venezuelan embassy in Georgetown, so I thought I could sort out my visa and stuff there and then not worry about anything once I've left Guyana. So I went to the embassy, and they thought it was kind of random because I don't think they get many British passport holders going through there. But yeah, I spoke to someone and they didn't really know much about the visa situation. Like online I'd seen that I need like some kind of tourist card if I'm going overland, but if you're flying in, you don't need this, you can get this on arrival. But overland, it said I needed some kind of tourist card. So the manager of the embassy, he wasn't sure. So he said he called London and they said, no, I don't need no visa or nothing like that. So I was like, it's weird that it says it online, the government site for UK travellers, but if he said they spoke to the embassy in London, I just took their word for it. So then I left then and found this tour company which was close to where I was staying. So I went over there and then I was like, yeah, I want to go on these days. And luckily they were going on the weekend that I was going to be there. So it was pretty convenient. So I asked the sales girl about the visa, and she didn't really know anything, and I thought it was kind of strange because obviously they're doing tours across the border, so they should know the visa requirements really. But she called her boss and he didn't know anything, but he called back a few minutes later and he was like, yeah, nah, British passport holders, they don't need a visa. So the bus for the tour left at 5 a.m. and it was like 30 people in there plus a few guides, and then it took about 4.5 hours to get to Paramaribó, just on the border. And they drove straight past the Brazilian side and stopped just before the Venezuelan side, and there was 3 4x4s that was going to take us the rest of the journey. Everyone was going to get split up because in Gran Sabana most of it is off-roading. So yeah, we got out of this coach, and as soon as I got out, like a guy come over to me and he goes, oh, you're the British guy? And I said, yeah. And he was like, I'm the owner of this tour company. Then he said, right, you actually going to need a visa to get into Venezuela. I didn't even bother reacting to what he said. Like, I knew I should have just trusted my conscience the first time. But obviously I travel like pretty much 5 hours now, so I thought I'd listen to what he had to say. So then he goes, right, you need a visa, but you should be able to get through. Like, just when you get to the border, just don't say anything, don't speak, don't bring out your passport, anything like that. Just don't mention anything. And then if someone says something to you, like one of the guys is just going to speak for you, this girl. So I was just like, oh man, this sounds crazy. Like, it's not even something I would choose to do. Like, I didn't put myself in this situation, but for I'll just go along with it. And the worst they can do really is just send me back. So everyone was split into these 3 4x4s, and the 3 drivers were Venezuelan. So we were approaching a border and they were like waving to all the border police and stuff. They seemed to be on super friendly terms because obviously this is a tour that runs like weekly, probably at least. So I thought that gave me a little bit of comfort. So then they stopped like all the three cars, and then one of the police opened the back door and it was looking around. Like, we were sitting facing each other. It was like some benches, kind of like a safari setup. And he was looking around inside, looking at everyone. And I was just sitting there, like, I didn't have no expression on my face at all. And then he was speaking to like one of the drivers at the same time and like looked around a little bit more. And then just closed the doors and then we drove off. And when we left there, like, I was just so relieved. Like, no one could see the relief on my face, really. They didn't know what I was going through because even the owner of this company didn't mention it to anyone, just like this tour guide. So I was just like, oh, yeah, this is good now. I think the only reason why this worked is because like I was the only foreigner on the bus. Everyone else was Brazilian. Like, the 3 drivers were Venezuelan, and Brazilians only need ID to get across the border. Like, they didn't even check anything at all. So they must have just assumed like, yeah, it's just a bus full of Brazilians, they're doing this tour and then they're going back. So that kind of went in my favour, the fact that there's no tourists in the city of Boa Vista at all really. But yeah, hopefully you have some idea now on how to avoid this situation, because if they sound like they don't know what they're talking about, then just assume that they don't. The tour itself was actually very good value. It was like $50, and that's to take you all the way to the border, which is like 5 hours plus another couple of hours into the Gran Sabana. And then they take you to like 5 different waterfalls, 5 or 6. And then you also get lodging, like a private room for that night included in the price. And then the following day, they take you to like a couple more waterfalls. And it's nice because you go to a lot of waterfalls, but they're all quite different. Like some are in wide open spaces, some are like in deep vegetation, like another one is on a cliff that you get to walk on, and then you got others that are like warm because they're exposed to the sun. So yeah, it was cool, it was nice to see, and there's no people around at all. Like it's just such open land. There's only small little towns. It's just you and the other people on the tour that you see. We left the following day in like late afternoon, got back in night time. So if you're ever in Boa Vista for whatever reason, you know, it's a good tour to do because it doesn't really take up much time, and you know, you can see a lot of things in that time. Just make sure you got your visa and stuff sorted first. I know some people are going to wonder about, you know, safety in Venezuela. Like I can't speak for other parts of entry, like Cucuta in Colombia. I heard that it's kind of rough there, but this border with Brazil, there was no problems whatsoever. This area in Venezuela is like fine. Like it's not different to anywhere else I've been. The border was the same as like other countries, so I wouldn't really worry about that too much. I don't think they'd be running tours every week, and a lot of people doing it if there was a big security situation. But yeah, if there's any other questions about what I did on this trip, just leave a comment or send a message. I'm out of here for now. Peace.